Hello there. My name is Anirudh Patel. Today we're going to talk about the risk management and the contingency plan. So I got this slide to start with just for the introduction in regards to what we're going to talk for this presentation. So the first thing is obviously the introduction, which I have done already. The next gonna be the risk assessment. So this is the what we're gonna talk about. Risk assessment. How is the process work in authors? That means me in my organization, and then what sort of contingency plan we have in place in case of any risk present. So in that next slide. Um, Obviously we're going to talk about the risk assessment process and how we're going to identify the risk. The next thing will be analyze the risk which is present, and we're going to assess the priorities on the risk. What's the threats look like, monitor and review this process obviously, and then see where the risk is sitting in regards to the how we're going to assess the risk. In next slide, we're going to talk more in regards to risk management process. In that, obviously, there is a three pillar as you can see in the slide. The first one is a hazard. So that is more in regards to talk about like what is the hazard. So obviously, when you talk about the LNG plant, the first thing come in your mind is a fire, explosion, naturally is a hazard. This sort of stuff is always there, present. How we gonna mitigate? That's a process we're talking about. So obviously that one, the hazardous material spill, that can be the next one. The terrorism or the workplace violation, pandemic disease, um, a utility outage, mechanical breakdown, supplier failure, or cyber attack. This can be the hazard. Today we're gonna more talk about the LNG leak on the LNG plant, and then how we gonna what's the risk look like, and how we gonna mitigate, and then what's the risk um, assessment look like, and then the mitigation plan look like. So the next thing from hazard, it goes to what asset is in on risk in regards to who is on the risk. People obviously is on the risk. The property, including building and critical infrastructure, that's on the risk. Supply chain, which is the next bit, which can be on the risk. System and equipment, obviously, when you have a fire, that can be on the risk as well. Information technology, that can be on the risk. Reputation, obviously, that's the big thing. Once you have any sort of fire or anything like that, that stuff can be in the risk as well. um, and then the next thing follow on that one is the regulatory requirement and obligation, and then the next one will be environment, that can be on the risk as well. So what this hazard will put the asset on the risk. Obviously, what's going to impact, so what's going to be impact look like? That can be a casualties, a property damage, business interruption, loss of customers, financial loss, environmental contamination, loss of confidence in the organization, fines and penalty. Obviously, the next one, and then lawsuits. That can be the obviously the impact on the business. Um, Now, if we talk about the next slide, which is more in detail, which obviously the metrics, how we gonna assess the risk. So the risk matrix which we use in our organization is, this is how it's look like. Obviously you got likelihood in here. um, this arrow pointing, this is got a minimum risk. The more you go away from the arrows, which is obviously got a, you go from green to the yellow to the red, it's got a more risk obviously, and it broken down in the consequence and the likelihood consequence, and it's broken down into the safety, health, environment, that sort of stuff, and to how we can basically, if you got any risk, how you can categorize what sort of number you get. So if you have any risk, let's say we got a LNG leak, so to calculate basically, in the next slide I'm going to talk about in detail anyway, but this is how we talk, like how you calculate the numbers. So in here, if you have a LNG leak, you consider as a unlikely. That's give you the number 4. If you follow that line, what's gonna be the impact? It can be a major impact. Yeah, so considering major impact, if you follow that line up and you get the number 6. So that's your impact number which you can get from this matrix, right? And the next bit which we're going to talk about, obviously the risk assessment I have done for this is more in regards to the LNG leak, and that's a hazard. I've gone through the previous spreadsheet, and I have done some calculation based on what's the likelihood like, what's the consequence and the impact can be, and what's the risk level. So if I'll take an example of release of LNG, what can be the cause? The cause can be the equipment failure, it can be the human error, it can be extended factor, example accident, fire and explosion risk. So what can be the likelihood for that sort of stuff? So they take an example of equipment failure. It can be the likelihood of 4, and then the consequence can be 5, and then the risk level can 9. How we can mitigate? So obviously regular equipment maintenance. So make sure the equipment maintenance get regularly, all the PMs is completed on the equipment, and then the checks is done by the operator every day on that equipment, which is a critical equipment. On the next bit is I'm going to talk about the human error, so which can cause a leak, or which can cause a pretty big damage in an LNG plant, right? So in that sorts of the likelihood can be number 3, the consequence can, or the impact can be 4, the risk level can 7, and comprehensive training can mitigate that sort of risk, obviously for the LNG plant. So this is, I got one more slide for the risk assessment. The next slide is similar to this one, and it is talking more in detail about what can be the impact. So it can be the equipment structure, downtime cost, economic impact, personal safety, safety of the plant and personal health risk, proximity to the risk in the area. So the people who's living around your plant can be in the risk as well. That environment can be on the risk, human error and the safety practices. And then these are the obviously the likelihood and the impact can be. How are we going to mitigate, which talk about in this column, right? So this obviously the risk assessment. So this is just how we have figured out the risk. This give you a number. How we gonna what's a contingency? How we gonna mitigate that risk? So this slide is, I got a 2 slide for the contingency planning basically. So the first slide is talking about the contingency planning for the LNG leak in the LNG production area. So the emergency shutdown system in place. So to make sure if you have any risk present, make sure that this emergency system is regularly checked and is functional basically. And part of the PMs get checked as per the routine inspection. Um, the isolation and containment. So isolation, the leak source and the containing LNGs, make sure it's get isolated as soon as you find any leak. Fire suspension system. So make sure it's functional. All the fire system is very important in LNG plant, and it's get pretty got a regulatory requirement to do the function test and check that system regularly on a PM. Um, Medical response team, make sure that that's in a good condition and it's in a place where you're working. Coordinate with the local emergency services. So make sure we got a system in place where you can coordinate and then get support from the local emergency services. And the other thing, on spot, like ERT team, emergency response team, is in place, and then everyone know how to contact them, and then obviously if we need them help, then you know that this is how this is a process. Obviously in our plant we got a radio, and you can contact them using the radio in emergency. So that's the first slide for the contingency planning, and the next one is similar to this one, which is talking more in a detail. Um, so basically, make sure that training and drills is regularly done. Communication is in place. Obviously, I talk about the radio that is there. The next thing is environmental protection. So strategies to minimize environmental impact is in place. Review and update. Schedule for reviewing and update the plan, and then the record keeping, and then the regulatory compliance and documentation and reporting system. So this, if we have this system in place, it can mitigate the risk of LNG leak, or in the leak in the plant. Um, yeah, so basically when we talk about the risk of LNG leak, how we do the risk assessment for the for our risk assessment process, what risk assessment matrix is in the place, and then what is a contingency plan, how we can mitigate the risk. um, this is the end of the slide, and thanks for the listening.